Hey, everybody out there in viewer land, and those of you watching the playback, I see you. Thank you so much for coming to the March Parentis Literary Salon. It's March. I don't know how that happened, but apparently it did happen because here we are in March. This is me. I'm Emma Voe, and here is my very special guest host. It is Vanessa Walters. She is an author, a screenwriter, a playwright, a creative writing tutor, a literary activist, and an all-around fabulous person. She's also on our board. She's really, really great. She is the author of a fantastic book called The Niger Wife, which in America is called The Lagos Wife. And I do not know, I'm going to ask her a question at the end of this. But the other thing I want you to know is that she was born and raised in London, has a background in international journalism and playwriting, and she is a Tin House resident was a Tin House resident and a Malay colony resident. So she's pretty, sparkly. And she's also written 2 YA books. And I want to know, so I know that your book was a Good Morning America pick.
Yes.
How did that feel? How was that?
I mean, as a Brit, it's like an extra amazing thing to sort of be embraced by America in that way. And I was just totally bowled over. And it's one of those memories I'll have forever. Just very magical.
That is so spectacular. I'm so excited and it's being made into an HBO series or movie?
Series, yeah, television series, yeah. It's still in the development stage, though.
What is it? Do you know whether they're going to call it The Niger Wife or the Lagos Wife?
I have no idea. I would assume they're veering a bit more towards the Lagos Wife, but I actually.
Oh, is it pronounced Lagos? You see, I don't know my pronunciation.
No, I know. I think it's the confusion with Lagos, which is obviously the Portuguese capital, like the Portuguese city Lagos.
Oh.
But Lagos has developed its own way of saying it. Lagos, Nigeria.
That's so funny. I just went to a wedding that was Lithuanian Nigerian. It was spectacular. There was so much dancing we couldn't breathe. Well, hello, you people out there. Hi, Helene. I'm glad you came out. And I also want to do a special shout out to our front row seat. Can you see them out there? It's Ellen and Ronald Schmier in the front row. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for getting a front row ticket. Also, Janice Eisman right behind her. Thanks so much. Also want to shout out to Vern and Ellen, Jennifer, Itai, Uri, Kathleen, Ariel, Robert, Elizabeth, Arlene, Linda, Renee, Catherine, David, and Mary Beth. Thank you all for buying tickets. We appreciate you. We appreciate your donations. Hey, Bohemia from Boulder, Colorado. Thanks a lot for joining us. Also, obviously, must thank the sponsor of tonight's what is this? Is this a show? What are we? We're something special. Tonight's Literary Salon sponsor is Adelphi University, particularly the low residency MFA program in creative writing. Adelphi's low residency MFA program is designed especially for parents and other people who have complicated schedules. They offer twice a year, 5-day residencies in New York City, and individualized instruction during the semesters. Their August residency will be held at the Center for Fiction in Brooklyn, which is a very spectacular space, if you guys know it. And this is very key, partial funding is offered to every single accepted student. So that's pretty cool. They're looking for applications. You can look them up. They are Adelphi University. So that is that. Also, I want to thank the DeGroat Foundation and the Poetry Foundation, our perennial help from NISCA, the NEA, and the LMCC. And the DeGroat Foundation wants us to know that they have a deadline of April 1st for the American Library in Paris visiting fellowships, which sounds really pretty sexy, and I kind of want one. And they are also funders of the Desperate Literature Short Story and the First Pages Prize, which are both also open for entries. So that's all pretty cool. And as you know, if you are watching, if you are logged in to whatever platform you are watching on, either Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you can send us notes like this person from Boulder, Colorado just did. Just type in the chat. We can see it and we will be happy to chat with you. So feel free throughout the night to write in your comments and your questions and say hello to all of us. And now I think it is time for Vanessa to introduce our readers for tonight. Take it away, Vanessa.
Thank you, Milda. And yes, today we have a truly amazing lineup of writers. We have Amanda Galvan Huynh, who is the author of Where My Umbilical is Buried, a chapbook called Songs of Brujeria. And I hope I pronounced that right. And co-editor of Color, Poets' Ways of Making, an anthology of essays on transformative poetics. We have Terese Svoboda, the author of Great American Desert, and a biography titled Anything That Burns You, a portrait of Lola Ridge, radical poet, and also poetry collections, When the Next Big War Blows Down the Valley, selected and new, and Professor Harriman's Steam Airship. Her latest books are the novels Dog on Fire, published in 2023, and the very recently published Roxy and Coco. We also have Kate Schmier's fiction and Kate Schmier. Her fiction and nonfiction have been featured all over, including CNN, NPR, Tin House, Apogee Journal, Lilith, and others. She's a graduate of the University of Michigan and Sarah Lawrence College. She is a recipient of an Elizabeth George Foundation grant, the Freya Project's Merit Grant, and a fellowship from the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. And Kate Schmier will be the first to read. So please, everyone, welcome Kate.
Yay!
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And thank you to Parentis for having me tonight. And I guess I should give a shout out to my parents for getting those front row seats, and to all the friends and family who have joined tonight. I'm going to read an excerpt from a story called Driving Lesson, which was published in this book, which is called Frankly Feminist, which is an anthology of short stories originally published in Lilith magazine. And this story is part of a larger project that I'm working on called The Store, which is an intergenerational story of 4 women entrepreneurs from Detroit, loosely based on my own family matriarchs. And one of the characters is inspired by my great-grandmother, who was very unconventional, very much ahead of her time. And in the early 20th century, as family lore goes, she was one of the first women in Detroit to drive a car, which was considered uncouth for women at that time. And she also owned and operated a millinery store. And then when she met the man who would later become my great-grandfather, she was faced with the decision of whether she wanted to settle down. And so when I think of the theme of tonight's salon, Searching for Meaning, I think a lot about her and about this idea of a woman trying to carve her own path and live her own life in defiance of society's expectations. So this is from Driving Lesson. Celia Sasson stopped the car. A dirt road twisted around tall pines. It was morning, still cool, the sun just a glint of light on metal. Your turn, she said. Seated next to her in the passenger seat, Sam ran his hands up and down the front of his trousers. Are you sure about this? I told you, Sam. I can't marry a man who doesn't drive. It still shocked her. Here was the broad-shouldered boy who tended his family's farm in Kokomo, Indiana, the man the Bank of Michigan had employed less than a week after he moved to Detroit. He stood 6'1", dwarfing the other boys she knew in brains as well as inches, and yet he had never driven an automobile. When he declared his intentions, she'd set him straight. Not until we fix your problem. Why does it matter so much to you? He'd asked. It was like asking why wings mattered to doves. Celia remembered the day she bought herself a Tin Lizzie. She'd saved 6 months' profit at her hat shop and placed a stack of bills on the Ford dealer's counter. She drove her Model T back to Hastings Street. Nafka, Papa yelled, tramp. The same slur he used when she told him she was opening her shop. Mama and Papa wanted her to marry a man like Sam Perlman, someone who might save her from herself. not unless the boy learned to drive. Now Sam pulled out a brass lighter, wedged a cigarette between his lips. His hands were shaking. I don't have all day, she said. She handed him her spare pair of goggles, buttoned her duster, and yanked open the door on the driver's side. He took slow strides towards her. He might have looked elegant with his long legs and slender build, if only he weren't so stiff. And yet, there was the gold watch, the tailored suit, the promise of comfort. She stood in front of the car and got in position to crank the engine. When I get in, move the handlebrake forward and put your foot on the clutch pedal. The engine started and Celia climbed in. Go, Sam. The car lurched forward. Dirt flew in their faces. Although Sam maneuvered the road's sharp turn, she felt him hesitating. He drives the way he lives, she thought, with no fire. Would you like me to show you how it's done? Sam got out and she took her place at the wheel, her throne. She drove off, gaining speed until the pines were only streaks of green and Sam was a speck of dust in her mirror. With one hand, she loosened her veil. She could leave him there in the field. He got out of the car to relieve himself and disappeared in the woods, is what she would say. His death was an accident. Sam's mother, with her 3 husbands in the ground, might know a thing or two about spinning these kinds of yarns. On the night Sam brought her home, his mother had been stunned to hear Celia had no intention of closing her store after she married. She'd pointed at Celia with her pinky, the one with the sapphire ring. I know you're kind, but wouldn't it be nice to rest? Now Celia considered her 12-hour workdays, difficult customers, Mama's calloused hands holding a pot of boiling water, trying to keep them warm in a house without heat. Celia couldn't see the end of the road, but she could see her future hedging her in, her old life flying at her like pieces of dirt kicked up from the tires. What if she simply drove on to wherever this path led? And I'll stop there.
Yay! That was great. It must have been so much fun to do the research about your grandmother, to fill in and to just enliven this family history. Did you feel that that's what you were doing? Like, did you feel like you were channeling her?
Absolutely. You know, I never met her, but her daughter, my grandmother, was an incredible storyteller. So I grew up just hearing these stories about who she was. You know, my grandmother always said that, you know, she felt like, you know, that she and her siblings had ruined my great grandmother's fun because she, you know, she had this store and she would go out dancing all night and, you know, and then she settled down and had 5 children. And my grandmother very much felt that she was, you know, a little bit of resentment there. But this is based on a true story. During her courtship with my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother knew how to drive, and she thought this was horrible that this man didn't know how to do that. So this was sort of my imagining of if she had given him a lesson.
I'm so intrigued as to whether she gave up driving after having the 5 kids or whether she was the driver that drove the 5 kids around. Do you know?
Yeah, as far as I know, she did not give up driving. You know, I wish I could, you know, ask my parents that are in the front row, but as far as I know, she continued to drive.
It's a good question if you're out there. You
should
text us in and let us know. You do have a comment from Jim Wagner. That was great, Kate. I felt like I was
thank you, Jim Wagner. I love it. There's such a friendly crowd here. All my friends and loved ones.
Kathleen Hill also says,
"Oh, my teacher from Sarah Lawrence."
Oh, how nice! That was so nice of you to come, Kathleen. Thanks. That's great. How was Sarah Lawrence? Did you love it? Did you?
I did. I mean, I had professors like Kathleen and you know, and many others that I'm
studying fiction or nonfiction.
I was studying
fiction.
Both.
You've done a lot of publication in both, right?
Yes, I studied fiction, and actually, the first time that I came to a Penn Parentis event was to see Stephen O'Connor read, who was also one of my professors from Sarah Lawrence. And I remember I hadn't had children yet, but it was kind of on the horizon, and just learning about this community and seeing other people read, it made me feel like, it was possible to both write and be a parent. So
I'm going to put up one more comment for you, and then we'll go on to the next reader, and we'll get back to talking to you.
Marsha. Marsha was my roomie at VCCA. We shared a bathroom, and that's how it is. You have your own room, but you share a bathroom. And the first night I accidentally locked Marsha out. So that was how and we've been friends ever since.
That's awesome. Steve, I think Steve even read for us. I think Christina's out there in the audience. She said yay.
Hi, Christina.
Okay, let's do our next reader. Vanessa, do you want to introduce?
Sure. Our next reader is Amanda Galvan Huynh. She's the author of Where My Umbilical is Buried, a chapbook, Songs of Riria, and co-editor of Color, Poets' Ways of Making, an anthology of essays on transformative poetics. Amanda has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Best New Poets, and Sundress Publications, Best of the Net. She was a 2016 AWP Intro Journal Project Award winner, 2018 Best of the Net winner, a finalist for the 2015 Gloria Anzaldúa Poetry Prize, and a finalist for the 2017 Poetry Society of America Chapbook Fellowship. Her poetry can be read in print and online journals such as Hayden's Ferry Review, Puerto del Sol, the Southampton Review, and others. She serves as the managing editor of Manoa, a Pacific Journal of International Writing. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, Vanessa. And of course, thank you for everybody who's tuned in or who's watching later on a playback as well. Time is such a gift. And of course, thank you for all the organization that goes into making these things possible. And Parentis, thank you also to just making this wonderful space. It's so nice to just be welcomed in this space and to be in community with everyone that's here, and for future people I haven't met to also be in community with you down the road as well. I'm going to read actually something new and also something from my book. So I've got two poems, and just so you know, there are different languages in this poem that I am happy to talk about as well. So this first poem is titled A Morning Gift. This morning, the rain gifts tamarind leaves, pearls, while I help my toddler with pants and socks. We sit by the door and I say, "Hay lluvia hoy," and they reach for their every encounter with lluvia, a witness to this small wet miracle from the sky, fingers pressed against windows, head tilted towards clouds, giving song to a droplet's dance, a miniature waterfall snaking off an awning, a soft percussion tickling their ears. M, the sound their father makes to tie these gray experiences into expression. Lluvia, I offer as another melody. When the sun sparkles through every falling drop, lluvia, m, lluvia, m. My toddler pulls and reaches for every moment we've sat by the door together, their shoes in my hands. ¿Qué quieres? Sneakers, red cowboy botas, sandals, Sailor Moon shoes. They search for the word to describe the ones that plunge into puddles huddled by curbs, the ones mud caresses around the heel, the ones lluvia sways and bends itself for, the ones their mother calls botas, lluvia. Their mouth opens to ask for botas, a word hanging between tongues to describe the small lineage of want on a day filled with rain. Thank you. So that's the first one. My little one is 2.5 right now. So we are going through language acquisition or just language learning. And we speak Vietnamese, Spanish, and English at home. And so this moment was really beautiful to kind of see the recognition of words and what they associate with which, like with rain, with boots, and to see that come together just with rain boots. It was really lovely and such a gift as well. And this last one is short. This is Hands of Mothers. Bless the hands, whirlpooling sunshine into our backs, the ones pulling our bodies through the small pains of lost toys and friends, the hands that may have never planned on being a mother, and the ones that feared being enough. Bless the hands of mothers who never had one to follow. Thank you.
So beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
Is much of your writing in using the trilingualness that you have, or do you have more languages also that you also
Right now it is. Right now I'm starting to see that I'm incorporating more Vietnamese and Spanish into one poem. Where My Umbilical Buried is definitely has a lot of Spanish and English. So this definitely goes through generations. It definitely looks at mother lineages, definitely looks for all of that. And Spanish, of course, because I grew up in a bilingual household, is something that just comes into my work. I'm currently learning Vietnamese because of my partner, and also because of my little one. And it's been wonderful to see that I am no longer mixing Spanish and English together, but now I also find myself preferencing Vietnamese and Spanish. So I will start a sentence in Spanish, but then I'll end it in Vietnamese and hop back in Spanish. So that's been really fun. And yeah, it's been an adventure.
It's so interesting. Like the more languages it's almost like there's layers in your mind where like they move. It's like they shift back one.
Yeah.
Like you have the most common language and then the next most common and the next. And when you learn a new one, it's like it has to sort of get in its like row somehow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That's so cool. I want to show you some of the comments. They were so nice. Siva Bukai says lovely poems. And Ingrid is on the 7 train right now.
Wonderful. I love it.
She checked in off the subway. Like
I
awesome.
love it. I love it. Yeah.
And actually, Christina has a good question about your magazine. For those who want to send work from Manoa, do you have any advice? Is it just for translators or how does it work?
So right now we're going through a transition period at Manoa. In the past, we have been a journal of solicited work. And so because our editorial team has shifted, we're also going through a period where we're trying to see what the future looks like. So right now you can't send work. However, we do have things in development that we're hoping to open up for work. So that's a great question. I wish I had an answer for you, but I guess the answer is it's under development. Like we're in the process. Check in with us later. We're very excited. We plan to be at AWP 2025 in LA.
We'll see you there.
We're very excited to bring some new stuff there. So that's on our mind right now.
Cool. Kate had something to say. I saw her almost say it, but then she didn't say it. What were you going to say, Kate?
Oh, well, I mean, I loved your reading, Amanda, and it was just interesting to hear you talk about, the multilingual household, because my husband is trilingual. So we have that in our house too.
Yeah.
And how that, as children are learning language.
Yes. And also, I would love to know, Amanda, when you talk about being able to prioritize the Vietnamese and Spanish, I want to know a little bit more about, what that feels like in terms of, I suppose, is there a greater freedom of expression? Are you able to feel more inside a culture, through not having to speak in the English, because I always feel like every language that you speak allows you to be yourself or be a different version of yourself. So what possibilities have come up through speaking the Vietnamese and Spanish?
Oh gosh, speaking Vietnamese has been difficult for me because it's such a tonal language. So that's been hard to grasp. And it's so important because we have 5 different tones. I'm thinking, I can see them right now. It's like we got the one that goes up, the one that goes down, the question mark looking one, then and like there's proper names for it, but this is like all that I like keep in mind. Like these are the tones that we have that could go with just one letter. And so tones are so important, how you're saying it, the vowels are centered. And I think it's so humbling when you learn a new language and you're getting yourself in there. And Vietnamese has been that humbling language for me. It's been wonderful though.
You apparently did it well. Because Helene said she recognized the Vietnamese.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. I was like, I'm still like, I have like been working really hard to like because I know like, because I know that it's going into my poems and then I will have to read it. And so this is why it's important for me. But it's also been a wonderful journey for my family as well, especially for my partner, because they know how to speak it, but they don't really know how to read and write it. And so by me learning how to read and write it, bringing it in and asking questions, then I'm introducing the written form, and there are magical things happening. Because even this week, I was on a family call with my in-laws and my sister-in-law, and I was like, how do you say this? Just to hear how they say it, but then also to have a conversation. And so it allows for communication to happen culturally, especially since my little one is starting to say more and more words in Vietnamese. And like, what are you saying? Because some of the words I just haven't gotten down, or even it's in that moment where children are trying to form the words. They're trying to grasp at that sound. And even in English, you might be like, are you trying to say car? Are you trying to say like buzz? I think you're trying to say this. And so it's fascinating to also watch that, to know, it's like, is this Vietnamese? Is this Spanish? Is this English? What are you trying to say? And to piece together and be on this journey with them as well, as they collect more and more words and just start saying more and more to us. So yeah. It's been fun.
Super fun. Let's have Vanessa introduce the next reader, who we've seen a lot. We love her.
Yes. Last but definitely not least, Terese Svoboda is the author of the short story collection Great American Desert, and the biography Anything That Burns You, a portrait of Lola Ridge, radical poet. Svoboda is an absolutely prolific writer and across many different forms. Her poetry collections include When the Next Big War Blows Down the Valley, Selected and New, and Professor Harriman's Steam Airship. Her latest novels are Dog on Fire, published in 2023. And literally, I think it's only been out for some days. Roxy and Coco, her latest novel, which had a fantastic write-up in the New York Times a few days ago. So definitely check that out. Welcome, Terese.
Terese has so many good things. She has 21 books, maybe more by now. 22? Are you already on 22?
Of course. So this is the one that was just published March 1st. And it's
blink and you miss it.
So what I'm going to read from, though, is Roxy and Coco, the tit-fronted birds here. And it's a novel about harpies, which are, as you know, bird women. And the plot is that these 2 harpies are social workers, and they have decided that the way to save the world is to address child abuse, which seems to be a good topic for this forum. And so they're social workers, particularly to monitor difficult family relationships. And sometimes one or the other loses their temper, and they pick them up with their claws and drop them over cliffs. That's where it goes with child abusers. And so they get into a lot of trouble. And it's based on the Greek myth with this soothsayer Phineas. The first version of the myth was that he was a soothsayer and Zeus was jealous of his abilities. But, that didn't really set right with me. I'm sure there were a lot of people who were jealous of his abilities, and Zeus, it just didn't seem right. So I read further into the myth, and indeed, Phineas was a child abuser. He had a second wife who disliked the kids, and so he buried them up to their necks in something, in sand, I guess, and tortured them, etc. And so the Zeus sent the harpies around to snatch food from them every time he attempted to eat. So anyway, so that was the foundation for the idea, and I started working on it in the previous century, and published a poem in one of my books about it and a short story, and so this is the novel. I like the way harpy sounds. It has a kind of harp-like angelic appeal, the music of heaven. Otherwise, we don't have any closer connection to the spiritual than a fat swallow recording on a Sunday. If humans catch us gliding overhead, a whoosh of beak and feather and claw, why, it keeps them alert. And the distraction might stop them from killing each other for a few minutes. So maybe we are angels, whoever they are, except for the violence I find myself drawn to. Roxy's a little more patient than I am and tries to rein me in, but it's not much use. I'm attracted to certain unsavory practices. Coco, she says, you have to rethink this. And it's only been a week. So that's the opening. The New York Times headline was, "Bad Parents Beware." So once again, we could have a discussion about that. They don't solve child abuse, which, that's pretty unsolvable because it's eternal. But however, the humans start to pursue the harpies for their kids, that is to say, the eggs. And so it's all very exciting. Let's see, and then because we're searching for meaning here, the search, which I go through the whole book, which is, what is human? Because the harpies are, I make a Darwinian claim that there was some branch that went up into the trees after it crawled out of the water and disguised itself well enough that they developed their own race. And as we know, the creatures crawled out of the water and then crawled back in and become whales. And in the interim, there were something like wolves. So it's all very possible. And so that humanity has a lot of permutations.
There's so much to address here. I don't even know where to begin. First, let's go with the cautionary tale for parents that the New York Times thinks it is. Why don't you talk about that? How did you feel reading that review?
Well, that was a little overboard because basically Coco is on the lam for straightening out a few parents in France. And then she only tosses one parent over a cliff in the story. So, but in a sense, I did a lot of research with regard to social workers, and they do face a lot of hard work and trouble trying to help people from their situations. And I had a babysitter a long time ago who had worked in a respite program, which is one in which you take the children away during the day and then you return them at night. And that was a conceit at the beginning of my book. And it didn't work very well because bad parents will be bad like 24 hours a day. Anyway, it was a fascinating look at the problems. One of the things to kind of think about is that the ASPCA was founded 8 or 9 years before anybody passed any laws protecting children. Obviously, animals were more important.
Perhaps less represented in boardrooms. or at least they seem that way. Marsha Butler says, wonderful, such an intriguing concept. Very cool. Yeah, so I don't know where to begin with you because you write so prolifically. So you've published so many books. Even since I've known you, you've probably published like 10 or 12 books. Like,
Yeah. How do you do it?
Well, when I have my two kids, I always felt that I was sort of drowning in their needs. And so I guess as soon as they could unbutton my blouse and nurse themselves, they had to go off to at least 4 hours of daycare. And that's when I did everything. And it made me sane. You know, being sane as a parent is really a positive attribute.
it absolutely is. Look who showed up. Look, Renee Steinke. Such a beautiful reading.
Oh, and hello, Ingrid. Oh, Ingrid.
Yes, it's super fun. No, that's really cool. And then, but you said that this one was started in the last century. So
Yes.
have you recently been like, okay, I am not going to start from scratch. I'm going to start from something else, and like pulling out old things and kind of being like, let's see, I never finished this one. How am I going to finish this one? What is it going to feel like in 2024? How does that feel to take something that has been, let's call it languishing or waiting patiently for you to go return to it?
Well, I have one that has been rejected in a lot of places. And so every rejection, I rethink it and I rewrite it. And I think it's coming along now. It's been like 15 years. And the other one, I started from scratch about 4 years ago, and that's coming along in starts and fits and starts. So we'll see. I did actually look at, I have 4 banker's boxes full of files of short stories, and I started to look at those and gave up. So you're safe.
I don't know, safe.
Yeah.
Some library is going to be like, what? Look at this treasure. Let's put everybody back in our thing so we can just go for it. And of course, audience out there, you know that we can see you and hear you, like if you type at us. So make sure that you start asking us questions. We will start it off with like, what, for example, drew you to this theme? As you guys know, like the theme for this night is searching for meaning. And I have to break this. This is a lovely comment. Sorry, just one last one. Thank you, Terese. Most enjoyed this intricately delicious read. Greatly appreciate the research that went into this book, as well as the widely attributes you bestowed upon the sisters. Author minor. So, yay. Just didn't want you to miss that one. So let's talk about searching for meaning. That's why we're here, and that's what we're trying to do. So let's start with just asking each of you, what drew you to this theme? What made you choose it out of all the themes that were offered? You can just start. Don't all talk at once.
I guess I can start. I guess as I was saying before, I mean, I love this theme. I think, searching for meaning is certainly a big part of what life's all about. And as I was saying in relation to my own work, I'm really thinking about this in terms of what it means, particularly as a woman, as a mother, to live life on one's own terms, and how to carve your own path. So that's kind of how I thought about this.
Cool.
I'll go next. So, for searching for meaning, I have, like I mentioned, a 2.5-year-old, full toddler mode we are in. And I'm thinking right now just the fact of what does it mean to search for meaning? What does that look like as a writer, now a parent? Because it has taken me a while to come back to writing since I did have my little one. And I think it is this spark, even in language itself, that is making me rethink, what do we mean when we are tying these words to the world around us, whether that's wall, whether that's cup, phone, whether of course we've inherited this history of language and tying language and making meaning out of it. But when you have multiple languages and you're hearing how other people in different parts of the world are creating meaning out of these sounds, it just kind of is blossoming into something that's very gorgeous. So yeah, just thinkings that I have.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Terese, you wanna?
Well, I mean, flying women, what's not to like, right? They're revenging, and rescuing children. And, the problem is when you're writing these things, poetry too, you don't really know what it means. That's something kind of inflicted after it's all finished and you're sweeping up the remains, and suddenly you stand back and say, oh my God, because if you actually know what you're writing theme-wise, the writing sort of collapses and loses life. So that's kind of a tricky question. But so, what does it mean to be human? If you're of a different color, a different race, a different species, because my book was a lot about species diversity and what it meant to be a bird, and what their predilections are. It's a wide panoply, and if people try to put that meaning into a very small bottle, it will explode.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's true. I don't know how to say this. There's truth. There's such truth in that. In that, if you try to contain the meaning too much, it will explode. But also, if you're trying to write it, it becomes, and then nobody wants to read it. So there's that delicate balance. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question that sort of follows up on something that Kate said, which you said as a mother, right? That there's this whole as a mother thing. And it's interesting that when we become mothers. So I just went today to this weird panel it wasn't weird, it's actually a very glamorous panel that I just watched. But it was about women of Wall Street and entrepreneurs, groundbreakers, disruptors, right? Really interesting. And it was, so there's this idea that women have societal expectations that we either conform to or break away from. And I kept thinking in the audience, isn't there a third way? Do we have to break expectations or conform to them? Isn't there a way to just be ourselves and do things that may or may not have anything to do with society? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
What do you think about that? The third way, maybe being the writer is a third way, creating our own.
I like that idea.
Our own worlds that we put on paper that people have to just, now that's what society says, because we are society.
I think what I love about everybody here is that the writing really feels like it really comes from each of you in the sense of who you are, and doesn't necessarily conform to set boxes out there in the world. I mean, Terese, your work is very surrealist. I think it would be very hard for people to say exactly what it is, and for them to have a consensus about. And you have written so across so many different topics and so many different characters and forms, and you're obviously propelled by your own sense of what it is you want to do, and the same with Amanda and Kate, in that I find your work to be so specific, and that's very thrilling for me to read, and really feel like your inner light, pushing you towards this. And I kind of had a question coming off of that, and in what ways has your writing been rewarding for you? What has been the most rewarding thing to be able to start these very different conversations with the world?
Kate, do you want to go?
Everybody's
so
like,
the question is what has been the most rewarding? I I still feel that the act of writing itself is the reward. I mean, yes, it's wonderful when, when we get an acceptance from a journal, or to find out that you've made it into a publication. But, especially now, my son is 4, and, as everyone in this room knows, when you're a parent, your writing time, it becomes much more limited. And when I am able to carve out that time, and I'm really able to kind of get in the zone, that just feels, immensely rewarding to me in and of itself.
Yes, the process, the play. I find myself coming back to play a lot. And I think watching my little one go into play and serious play is something that's been on my mind. It was so easy when we were younger to just go into the motion of playing without really expecting anything to come out of it. And I feel like I'm having to relearn this as well with my own work, in terms of when I sit down to write something, it doesn't necessarily need to become something, that it is, again, in the act of doing that. That's where, like, that's for me, that's
very liberating
where
to remove
I started.
that
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah, it's like where was the younger me when I was just writing because I just wanted to create and I wanted to have fun and I was in that moment.
Yes.
So yeah.
So my last poetry book was called Theatrics, Poetry Plays, and I work on the play part, which is, I was trying to inflict poetry with the concept of play and drama at the same time. So there would be an experience of reading, which suggests a dramatic moment, but mostly play. And it was lots of fun to write. So anyway, dopamine is the way to go. You just have a few hours of something going on in your brain and you feel great.
Yeah, the idea to entertain yourself first, and then your readers will be entertained, right?
Yes.
To get yourself out of your worry head and your list head and your when's the pickup head.
Yeah. I remember when I was pregnant in 2019, and it was about a week before I gave birth, and I went to go see the Toni Morrison documentary, The Pieces I Am. And something she said about parenting just has stuck with me to this day. She was a single mom and she was working full time as a book editor. And she talked about how, at any given time, she had like 63 items on her to-do list. And at some point she said to herself, what do I actually need to do that I will die if I don't do this? And it was to mother her children and to write. And that's, I think about that, as kind of a North Star today.
That's really good advice. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's not money.
Yeah,
right. It can't be that.
It's true.
That's true.
Well, so here's a larger scale question. So the world is, slowly falling apart. Entropy, we love it. We don't like watching it. It's hard to live through it. How much do you feel at your desk, since this is the searching for meaning, topic, how much do you feel at your desk responsible to ultimately write something that's going to change the world, that's going to affect the world, that's going to be read and be meaningful to somebody outside of yourself? Do you have that pressure, or are you able to just play through it and be like, you guys figure it out later?
On this, I think of small change. I think also through the act of writing, we learn how to re-see the world and to change ourselves. And so even in that act, we're already enacting change. And I think it would be a lot of pressure, at least for me, to be like, no, your writing has to change the world. And I think, it starts a lot with myself, because being able to write and find time and carve time, I know I'm able to show up for my family in ways that I wouldn't be able to if I didn't get the space for myself. And coming back to that idea of pouring from an empty cup versus pouring from one that has been filled. And so, it can be very daunting and overwhelming to think that we have to make big change. And I think looking at the smallness of what we can do and what is in our control to do is where we should start. Or at least for me, where I start.
Nice. You want to follow up, Terese? No? Terese, did you want to follow up on that? Did you have a...
Getting people to relax is a contribution.
Pretty huge.
And, anytime you start off with some preconceived notion, at least in my world, I'm sure other people who are more talented can take some abstract concept like climate change, for example, and turn it into something magnificent. But I struggled with that for a long time with this this new novel I'm working on. And, I just let it go. And I imagine basically that my concerns are everyone's concerns, and it will filter down to my work no matter what.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Kate, do you have a battle between your fiction and your nonfiction side on like entertainment versus like getting something said that isn't being said?
I think it's changed for me. For a long time, I was kind of, more focused on essays. And when I went back to grad school, I was studying fiction. But I think particularly after I had my son, I really, when I do have the time, I want to write fiction. I don't know if it goes, I'm thinking about what Amanda said with play and seeing my son playing. And I just want to get into my imagination whenever I can.
Cool. Yeah. Amanda, did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on that? No, you're good.
I'm good.
Vanessa, did you have any questions? And audience, you are allowed to ask questions too. I see that Ingrid said something about searching for meaning that has to do with a Fats Waller tune, which was used on the weekly opener to the big broadcast. You meet the nicest people in your dreams. Which one of you had that on a... I'm not sure how that relates to the conversation. I missed the connection.
It's in the piece that I read.
Ah.
And I have to say, I didn't know about the big broadcast, so it's nice to hear that it's going on.
It's cool.
Yeah. I did have a question, which actually came from someone else who really is sort of looking for perhaps a little inspiration as a parent writer. So, when, being a parent, obviously the course of parenting does not run smoothly. And what happens when larger issues eclipse the work, if they do? How do you roll with it, or how do you get back on track when you've been derailed? Is there anything in your experience you can speak to, or just some general thoughts?
That's good. What's in your toolkit? Let's start with Amanda, because she's in the middle. Yeah. Go. What? You wake up early?
Waking up early. For a while, I had to get into the habit of waking up at like 6 a.m. just to do 30 minutes to an hour of writing, just to have time for myself. Because I was noticing, like I mentioned, I was very cranky when I did not write. But something else that just also speaks to what I do or how I write is usually I will carry a line or two in my head for a couple of weeks before I sit down to write the poem, or I will play with this idea. And I was talking to another mother who was mentioning that counts. That's the work. As you're driving and you're thinking about a story or you're thinking about something, that counts as writing. That is counting the work, that it's still there, that it's still with you, that even in these small moments of time, folding laundry or, grabbing groceries or doing whatever
research.
It is, it's research, but it's also, for myself, for a poet, it's how we're looking at things.
Yeah,
how
you have
we're
to value
perceiving
and
the
honor
world.
that time that you spend thinking. Just like nobody would say like the time that the actor spends at home memorizing their lines is not part of being an actor. Like obviously, everything that you do that creates your story or your poem or your screenplay or whatever you're writing, like everything you do is part of the creation of the whole, even if it's just walking around and getting inspired. Like, I saw a bird and now I have to write about that bird,
Yes, to me, the work itself is solace. So, for example, I was writing that biography, and it was a huge, big, long work. And things were difficult for me then. So I would just disappear into it. It didn't require, because it was a biography of somebody else, it didn't require me to access the feelings and so forth that a poet or even a fiction writer has to dredge up. Anyway, that worked really well during that disaster.
I actually, Terese, you've written an opera.
Yes.
Did you write just the libretto or the arias as well? Did you write the lyrics for that?
Just the libretto, yeah.
And the book, was the music written first or was the book first?
Oh, I wrote the book first.
And then you found a composer to do the...
That was fun.
I bet it was. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm always fascinated by everybody doing all the different things, like all the different, it's like, so neat.
The collaboration with people, if you're with smart people, it's amazing, because having people look at what you're doing and add their own brilliance is unbelievable. But sometimes on some level, the collaboration is a disaster because here we are, all artists, and their egos get in the way. So it can be very trying also.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. I mean, I think all collaborations can be very hard, particularly among artists.
Yeah.
It's super funny. Oh yeah, our fellowship, we have to talk about it. It's coming up soon. Our deadline is April 17th. We Parentis awards $2,000 to a single writer who wins by writing the best piece. And so it's under 500 words this year. It's 499 words deadline. So anybody can do it. 490 words of your absolute most brilliant talent. Put them on the page and send them in. There is the application is on our website under fellowship guidelines. You have to have a child under 10 to be eligible, but you also get publication in a Canadian magazine. You get to be on this broadcast. What do we call this? This salon. You get to be on it with 3 other established writer parents, and you get a year mentorship, which is really great, because we like to help people by staying in touch. And speaking of mentorship, do you guys have writing partners or writing communities, or how do you feed the need to have readers and to have community and to have feedback and to talk to them when nothing's going right? Who do you talk to? You screamed yes, so let's hear it.
I think one of my main key people is here tonight. I've had the same writing partner for, I think, over a decade now, Leah Schnallbach, who's a wonderful writer. And, she and I have always had, 9-to-5s, office jobs, in addition to writing. And we used to, once a week, after work, we would go to a coffee shop and just stay and write side by side until the place shut down. And then with COVID and, after becoming a parent, that was no longer possible. So we moved it to Zoom, and after I put my son to bed. But it's been, having that, weekly kind of accountability, in addition to as Terese said, writing is very solitary, but having that in my week has really helped keep me going.
I think she appreciates it.
Oh yeah,
you wrote "I am indeed here."
And then, other members of my wonderful writing friends and community that I see here, Ziva and Marsha, and it's important. It really, I think for me, it really does to have that sense of community.
Amanda, you've moved around a lot, because you were telling us your journey. You were born in Texas, you've moved to New York, you lived everywhere, all over the place, and now you're in Honolulu. Are you able to find the same kind of community, or are you doing this online mostly with people?
So no, I was just thinking about this too. I unfortunately don't have somebody that I've been writing with for a decade, which sounds lovely. Let me know when you meet. And so it's been a challenge, just because I have moved. I got my MFA in Virginia, and then after that moved to New York, and then I went on artist residencies for 2 years before getting into the PhD program here in Honolulu. And so it's always been a constant movement. And so finding the time for myself and learning about myself as a writer to sit and write has, for me, been mainly on my own. Every once in a while, I would try to meet up with some of my friends, which I keep in contact with and absolutely love. But there was nothing consistent that was happening just because of life things. COVID was happening, distance, time changes from 5 to 6 hours were happening. So I have a friend who's on the East Coast too. And even in my mind, I was like, we used to talk a lot when I was on the East Coast about just life and writing. But when I moved to Honolulu, it became very difficult because now 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock is 7, 8 o'clock East Coast time. And so finding a time that matched up was very difficult to find. And of course, life is also happening. But I think maybe finding a accountability partner would be great in terms of, hey, did you write that 100 words you said you're going to write? Did you do blank that you said you were going to do?
So this is where really I feel like I have to jump in and say, I know we offer these, by the way, to title members. I know. You can join us, and we have these on Zooms all the time.
Yeah,
just find one and have a new community. Therese, what do you do? Do you have
Well, I've had the same writing group for 40 years.
Wow, you got me beat.
That's so beautiful.
They keep dying off. What can I say? And I have a new writing group. I think there's still a group in Victoria, where I live half the year in British Columbia. But I taught twice at the University of Hawaii, and there are people there. You'll be very interested to know.
Oh yeah, they're here, but I feel like we're dispersed, or at least with the pandemic, everything got really quiet, and we're just now starting to see things pop back up.
Yeah, it's
and people coming back into community. We have a generative poetry community thing that happens over at Box Jelly right now, but it's been very slow moving, and to watch it go quiet and then to kind of see everything start, like organizers coming out, it's been a waiting game. But I'm looking forward to things picking up a lot more.
And I think they will. And if they don't, you can always come and join us online, because that's what we're here for, especially for people who leave communities and are struggling, and especially with parenting, that you don't always know if you can commute to a coffee shop or wherever people meet that are your things. So sometimes having it come to your house is kind of nice. Yes, Therese, you want to show us?
This is my third collection. I don't know how to do this. And it has 44 stories in it, and I would never have had so many stories had I not had a group. So that's
I mean, community is really, really vital. It's definitely one of our core values. All right, my dears, we have been here for an entire hour. I know it's felt like 15 seconds, but here we are. Thank you again to our sponsors, NISCA, and to LMCC, the NEA, to the Poetry Foundation, to the DeGroat Foundation, and of course, very hearty thank you to Adelphi University, who sponsored this whole salon just so that you could see it. Isn't that great? Now go get an MFA there. And thank you so much to Vanessa Walters for co-hosting. Everybody go and get her book so that you finish it. And if you're in Britain, it's called The Niger Wife. If you're here, it's called The Lagos Wife.
The other way around. It's The Niger Wife here in America.
The Niger Wife here and The Lagos Wife there. Oh, I didn't know that. You see, these are the things that the publishers do not tell us when they just give us the cover. Anyway, I have just started it. I am like a third of the way through, and it is a page turner, people. It's a lot of fun to read. So, go buy that too. You can do that. You can, by the way, buy them on bookshop.org under the Parentis shop. And then we get some money. You get to support an independent bookstore near you. And Vanessa gets to put her kid through college. So this is all of our writers. If they have books, they will be on the bookshop. See, look at this. They will be on bookshop.com. So, .org, sorry, bookshop.org. It's a nonprofit. Like we are a nonprofit. Yes, that is it. We will see you all next month on the second Tuesday of the month in April. We are very, very excited to have a whole new set of writers that are also parents who are here to inspire you and show you that we won't tell you how to do it, but it can absolutely be done. These people prove it every month. So thanks so much for coming, and I hope that you all have a great day.